The leader of the Ontario NDP says the Ford government needs to do more to improve highway safety here in the north. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Ontario opposition leader Marit Stiles was in Thunder Bay today to drum up support for her party's plan to make highways safer here in northwestern Ontario.
Stiles held a news conference at the Dawson Road Truck Inspection Station to talk about her party's efforts to improve road safety in the north. Lee Noonan was there and she joins us now in studio. Lee?
Thank you, Riley. In her comments today, Stiles reiterated many of the points we've been hearing from Northern Ontario MPPs about highway conditions in the region, but she's hoping to make northern highways into a province-wide issue.
Gathering her supporters at a Dawson Road inspection station, Ontario NDP leader Marit Stiles called on the Ford Conservatives to keep truck inspection stations operating 24/7. It's one among many highway safety measures her party wants to see implemented urgently.
We need the government to ensure that people in Northern Ontario have the same safe and reliable access to highways as people in the South. Northern Ontarians right now are paying with their lives. We cannot afford to wait.
Stiles believes northern highway safety is an issue that should also matter to people outside the region.
I've also been spending a bit of time down in areas like Brampton in southern Ontario, where a lot of the truckers live, who are on our highways, and working with them to also raise their voices, because they want safe highways too, right? Like, it's their lives that are being lost as well.
Better training for truckers and tighter regulation of training schools are top of the list of changes she wants to see. The NDP also have two private members' bills before Queen's Park. One would make it illegal to cross a double yellow line, and the other would improve road maintenance and see northern highways plowed within 8 hours. Stiles acknowledges that majority governments will rarely pass an opposition-backed law, but she hopes this issue might be the exception.
First of all, this is a matter of life and death. The only thing stopping them from passing these bills is the political will to do so. And you know what? We'd be happy if they just take those ideas and run with them, right? We don't care who passes them, as long as we get those laws and those regulations changed.
After years of beating the drum on highway safety, Stiles says what's needed to move the issue forward is more public pressure.
People here need to contact Conservative MPPs in their communities. You know, if they have a representative, or even if they don't, to contact them, to reach out and say, we are fed up. Do the right thing.
Meanwhile, Stiles says her party, including Thunder Bay Superior North MPP Lise Vaugeois, will continue to raise the matter at Queen's Park. She's optimistic the government can be pushed to act. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
The Thunder Bay Police Services Board has adopted a new Indigenous relationship policy.
It happened at this morning's meeting and is meant to help repair the relationship between police and Indigenous people. Vasilios Bellos was at the meeting and has more.
The Thunder Bay Police Board began its Tuesday meeting with a moment of silence to pay respect to 14-year-old Mackenzie Muniz and 21-year-old Jenna Ostberg. The two Indigenous citizens both died under tragic circumstances in Thunder Bay over the past few weeks. It led to community pushback against how the police service handled the missing persons case involving Muniz and the 911 calls involving Ostberg. Immediately afterwards, the police board adopted a new Indigenous relationship policy, the first of its kind.
Critical too that we're going to show accountability.
Board Chair Karen Machado says the policy will ensure Indigenous leaders and community members are consulted and have a say when it comes to future board decisions.
Sense of duty to acknowledge these things, recognize the trust is broken, and to work towards rebuilding that trust.
Myself and the chair getting together and meeting with our Indigenous leaders on a regular basis, which we do anyway, and just as it goes along, sort of with some of the recommendations that have been in the past.
Chair Machado and Chief Fleury both vow that conversations with the Indigenous community will have influence at future board meetings. And after the meeting, Chief Fleury spoke to the SIU investigation into the police service after the death of Jenna Ostberg.
I can understand that would cause some concern and a little bit of frustration on some people's part.
Fleury discussed the public anger against Thunder Bay Police that initially came when the SIU alleged the service didn't respond to a domestic disturbance call prior to Ostberg's death. The police oversight agency later found that call didn't in fact involve violence.
Changed the tone of where the original piece, what I put out there, and there was a little bit of concern in the community. So I'm glad that that came out, and I think it kind of settled that down a little bit.
There's no word at this point as to when the SIU will conclude its investigation. Vasilios Ballos, TBT News.
Also during the police board meeting, there was a discussion about changing the name of the Thunder Bay Police Service. It was brought forward with the idea of incorporating regional into the title as a way to secure more provincial funding. Those in favor cited unofficial reports that Thunder Bay's population is about 30% higher than what's currently recorded by the census. The police service was compared to the Thunder Bay Regional Hospital, which serves many people outside the city. Mayor Ken Boshkoff, who sits on the police board, believes a name change, in fact, could impact future funding decisions.
Yes, we have a provincial police, but the amount of servicing we do, and it's acknowledged by the province, provincial ministers, the Thunder Bay service area population is a minimum of 150,000. Therefore, I can only say if we're servicing a much larger regional population, let's call it like it is.
While there's no commitment, a number of board members expressed interest in discussing a name change in the future.
More than 9 years after an elderly woman died in a Fort Frances hospital, the former nurse who altered her medication records to steal morphine for her own addiction has been sentenced to 2 years in prison. 38-year-old Lindsay Coyle was originally charged with second-degree murder, but pleaded guilty in 2022 to criminal negligence causing death. The victim, 76-year-old Hermina Fletcher, died at Lavondre Hospital in January 2015. Coyle admitted to stealing morphine for her own personal use and being high while on the job. She was terminated a few weeks after Fletcher died and surrendered her nursing license a year later. Coyle's lawyer had sought a 3-year suspended sentence, while the Crown lawyer argued for 2 years behind bars. The judge agreed with the Crown's submission. In a statement, Fletcher's family says this prosecution has been a long and difficult journey. They appreciate that the judge recognized the gravity of Coyle's actions and the need to publicly denounce and deter such grave and irresponsible misconduct.
The next time Thunder Bay voters head to the polls in the 2026 municipal election, the ballot could look completely different. The city is looking at changing everything from the number of councillors to ward boundaries and even questioning whether to keep the ward system at all. The city has launched an online survey to get input from local residents. It's called the Council Composition Survey, and it's now live at getinvolvedthunderbay.ca. It asks residents to weigh in on questions like how and how much they interact with city council members and whether councillors should work in their roles full-time. Longtime former councillor Rebecca Johnson is chair of the citizen-led Council Composition Committee. She hopes to see all residents engage with the consultation process.
The fact is, this is democracy in action. Once it's approved, the city will start advertising and how you will be voting in the next election. My feeling is it's going to be different than what we currently have. So you need to be involved. You need to be part of the democratic process of change in this community.
To complete the survey online, you need an email address and you need to register, but paper surveys are also available at the city libraries. There will also be pop-up locations over the coming weeks. The survey will remain open until February 4th.
Canada Mortgage and Housing has released its year-end statistics for new home construction across the country. And while the numbers of new housing starts fell 7% nationwide, the total new units in the city of Thunder Bay rose by about 50% over 2022. According to the CMHC, our city saw 50 new single-detached homes started in 2023. That's the lowest number in the past 5 years and follows a national trend for single-family home builds. But on the flip side, multi-unit construction saw a big spike in Thunder Bay last year. The majority of the 150 new units were apartment complexes, and those multi-unit builds were approximately double the amount seen over the previous 4 years. That boosted the total housing starts last year to an even 200, which was 66 more than in 2022. Most of the new apartment constructions can be seen going up along Golf Links Road and Junot Avenue. The rise in overall housing starts will be extra important in the years ahead, as the city has to meet ambitious targets in order to qualify for provincial and federal housing incentives.
The Play That Goes Wrong has been billed as Broadway's funniest smash hit, and it's now coming to a Thunder Bay stage as the Badani Theatre Company debuts its version starting on Thursday evening.
Good evening, I'm Inspector Carter. Take my case. This was the Charles Harrison.
The show is being presented at the Paramount Theatre. It's set in the 1920s and follows the fictional Cornley Drama Society's newest production, The Murder at Haversham Manor. But things quickly go from bad to utterly disastrous. The hilarious show has everything from an unconscious leading character to actors who trip over everything. Director Spencer Hari hopes the audiences will be left with sore cheeks from laughing so hard.
This show has been a long time coming. We've put a lot of hours into rehearsing. Pieces of the set are going to be finished when it opens. We're really excited about that. We got a whole shipment of nails.
Annie has never been on TV before. And I'm usually backstage. But the show's going to be, the set's going to look great.
The play has 11 dates in January and early February, starting at 7:30 each night. Tickets are available at the box office or through Eventbrite.
Long Lake 58 Chief Judy Desmoulins is celebrating a big win, but it has nothing to do with the upcoming band election later this month. Instead, she won the jackpot on the OLG scratch ticket. Desmoulins was in Toronto to pick up the big check worth $250,000. The 63-year-old chief says she couldn't believe it when she scratched off the Instant Red Hot 10 Times ticket and then realized she had won the top prize. The ticket was purchased at the Y&T Variety in Long Lac. Desmoulins says her favorite games are instant scratch tickets because they are relaxing to play at home. She said she's planning to take her family to an NHL hockey game to celebrate the big win.
Oh, that is not a bad little cash prize.
No, not at all.
But Fiona, I may choose to go somewhere a little warmer than a hockey arena because the temperatures outside are pretty frosty and I would relish the opportunity to get away from them.
Yeah, definitely below normal for this time of year. We should be seeing daytime highs around -9. Instead, we topped out at -18 and a wind chill of -27. Though that was an improvement after starting the day at -23 and a wind chill of -32 at around 8 a.m. this morning. Kind of a frosty way to start your day. Winds were, we'll call them light to moderate, 12 to 19 kilometers per hour from the west, with those periods of light snow throughout the day. Now, if we take a look at what has been moving through the region, you can see those little spots of light snow. So it wasn't consistent, it was very light. The majority of it actually is hitting more of the eastern shores of Lake Superior, and let's talk about that a moment. Sault Ste. Marie has some light snow. They're expecting to see more, but it's hitting closer to Wawa. They are under snow squall warnings at this time. They have been alternating between blowing snow and heavy snow, and they could see upwards of 60 centimeters from this system before it is all said and done. Everywhere else, much calmer, much calmer. We had periods of light snow to the north through Red Lake and Greenstone, but you can see the temperatures pretty consistent for most locations, ranging from -19 to about -21, and wind chills are at this hour making it feel about 9 or 10 degrees cooler than these numbers should suggest. So it feels closer, upwards of -30 at this time. Here in the city of Thunder Bay tonight, we're basically going to see a repeat of last night. Periods of light snow, and risk of frostbite as temperatures drop down to -22. Wind chills around -30, and winds from the southwest for the most part hovering around 20 kilometers per hour. That is definitely seasonal nights, but very cold days, Ryan. And unfortunately, that is going to be the trend. In fact, that's going to continue well into the weekend. Here's the good news. You can probably put away your shovels after tomorrow.
Well, Fiona, I'm glad there is some good news because as we turn our attention to the economy and the cost of living after the break, not such great news coming from those numbers. Canada's inflation rate actually ticked up in December to 3.4%. We'll have the latest on that after the break.
Well, there is concern among Canadians for sure.
The Bank of Canada's latest inflation numbers are out, and while they're almost exactly what economists predicted, they're also moving in the wrong direction.
Canada ended the year with its second highest inflation rate in 3 decades. Experts say even though the December jump was expected, there are worrying signs beneath the surface. CTV's Colton Prail reports.
It's not the news Canadians were hoping to see. Inflation increasing, up from 3.1% in October and November to 3.4% in December. The jump is driven in large part by year-over-year prices for gasoline. But there's concern after core inflation measures increased slightly month over month, highlighting a lack of change in key inflationary drivers like shelter costs.
That really leads into this discussion around rate cuts. Is the Bank of Canada in the position to rush to rate cuts?
A question on the mind of many homeowners, staring down mortgage renewals and hoping for the bank to cut interest rates as early as this spring.
If your renewal's coming up, and all of a sudden your mortgage payment might go up $300, $400, $500, then that's where the problem is. So there is concern among Canadians for sure.
Experts say one-off increases in airfares and passenger vehicles were also significant contributors to headline inflation, but they're cautiously optimistic trends are heading in the right direction, although strong wage growth could pose a challenge.
Is that sustainable if you're aiming for a 2% inflation environment? So I think there's, yes, lots of challenges yet to get to that 2% target the bank is aiming for.
The Bank of Canada will announce its latest interest rate decision next week, a move that will tell Canadians exactly how confident it is in its ability to hit the target. Colton Prale, CTV News, Ottawa.
To the U.S. now. This time the polls were correct. Donald Trump won and won big last night. It came just 30 minutes after the caucuses and voting began in Iowa. With more, here's CTV's Joy Melvin from Des Moines, Iowa.
After cruising to a blowout victory here in Iowa, Donald Trump's first campaign stop was a New York courtroom to face a defamation suit, a jury deciding how much he owes the writer E. Jean Carroll over allegations he sexually abused her decades ago. Last night, Trump took more than 50% of the vote among conservatives and evangelicals in Iowa, a striking political comeback for the former president. The bitter cold affecting turnout, the lowest in 25 years. Still, a win is a win. In spite of the former president's legal challenges, he's tightened his grip on the Republican Party and the nomination.
This is the first because the big night is going to be in November.
Not if Nikki Haley can help it. Coming in a distant third, she's pivoting to the New Hampshire primary, where the former South Carolina governor is within single digits of Trump in the polls. Appealing to independent voters there, endorsed by the state's governor, it's Haley's best shot at tripping Trump up.
Our campaign is the last best hope of stopping the Trump-Biden nightmare.
Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, coming in a distant second place, staked his entire campaign on Iowa. Both he and Haley spent more time battling each other than Donald Trump.
In spite of all of that they threw at us, everyone against us, we've got our ticket punched out of Iowa.
But it's tough to see how long he can raise money and attract support to keep his campaign alive. Haley says she won't debate DeSantis. She's going after Trump in New Hampshire, which holds its first contest next week. Then it's on to Haley's home state in South Carolina. Joy Melvin, CTV News, Des Moines, Iowa.
In Saskatchewan, today is day 2 of the inquest into the mass stabbings on the James Smith Cree Nation and in the nearby village of Weldon. Troubling details are emerging from testimony today as family members and survivors hear how their loved ones died. CTV's Allison Bamford has the details.
This is the toughest evidence for friends and family to hear so far. Loved ones have stepped out of the room crying, and others are being consoled as they sit and listen to the disturbing details. An RCMP major crimes investigator is taking us through the 42 separate crime scenes, outlining exactly how and when 11 were killed and 17 others injured. The attacks began at 5:30 in the morning when Miles Sanderson and his brother Damien broke into their uncle's house, and Miles stabbed him with a pair of scissors. Damien stepped in to stop it, and after the two left, there was a fight between the brothers that left Damien dead in a field. This kicked off the deadly rampage of stealing vehicles, kicking down doors, and brutally stabbing victims in their own homes.
Family members would really appreciate, knowing the full scope of what happened that day because, they just have their little windows of knowledge of what happened to their loved ones.
RCMP are trying to answer questions many have. Why did Miles Sanderson carry out these attacks, and why did he target certain people? Some of the victims were relatives, others were affiliated with a local gang. More answers are expected when an RCMP behavioral specialist takes the stand later in the inquest.
And that was Allison Bamford reporting. Over in Toronto, jurors heard from a police superintendent as the inquest into the death of Sammy Yamtim continues today. CTV's Alison Hurst has that story.
Jurors in the public inquest into Sammy Ateem's death are learning more about then Constable James Furcillo, who fired the fatal shots, and heard that less than 2 weeks before, he'd pointed a firearm at someone else while on the job. Toronto Police Superintendent Lisa Crooker told jurors about a use of force alert, saying there was one July 16, 2013, and that is point shotgun. Crooker was called to detail the Toronto Police hiring, recruiting, and screening processes, monitoring of members, changes and updates, and to explain her understanding of the early intervention program. She says that's triggered when a threshold of alerts for things like use of force, complaints, or vehicle collisions is reached within a 12-month period. Any use of force alerts that were triggered that involved Mr. Furcillo, asked Inquest Counsel Grace Alcaide-Janikis. I do have incidents that were triggered in 2012, Crooker replied, and outlined the dates. Alcaide-Janikis summed it up saying, there were 5 alerts that had been generated in 2012 on the dates that you've indicated. In terms of the chart I was reading, those are use of force reports that did get entered, Crooker says. Ateem was killed in 2 volleys of bullets while he was on a streetcar holding a small knife on July 27, 2013, shortly after midnight. Jurors acquitted Furcillo of second-degree murder related to the first round of shots, but he was convicted of attempted murder in relation to the second. During the inquest, Crooker agreed when asked about certain units and areas that may require officers to draw their weapons more often than others. And she says the early intervention program is not a disciplinary system. On that, Councillor Ed Upnicks asked, your concern was the overall well-being of the officer, correct? It is from a wellness perspective, correct, explained Crooker. The inquest is set to last 13 days with 14 witnesses expected to speak. Alison Hurst, CTV News.
Former Alberta Premier Rachel Notley is stepping down as leader of the Alberta NDP. Notley says she plans to stay on until a new leader is picked. She says she may or may not remain as member for her Edmonton riding and hasn't ruled out running for the NDP in the future. Notley has been party leader for nearly a decade and led the NDP to its first ever majority government in 2015.
The 75th edition of the Emmy Awards was held last night. Much like in the shows that were honored, there were big laughs and moments of drama. The broadcast took place after a 4-month delay because of the writers' strike. Here's CTV's Scott Hurst with some of the moments that were worth waiting for.
Better late than never, the Primetime Emmys taking center stage at last.
Hello, friends.
Anthony Anderson guiding viewers through the night with a little help from his mom, playing timekeeper to the stars.
Paulo, Francesco, and Bruno, thank you. I know I'm getting wrapped it up. Okay, yes.
One of the big winners, Succession, taking home 6 trophies, including individual awards for Sarah Snook and Kieran Culkin, as well as Outstanding Drama. The Bear also with 6 wins, sweeping all of its categories in its first year of competition. Jeremy Allen White winning for lead actor, and the show taking home top comedy.
It's beautiful. The cast and crew. There's so many people that make this show happen.
Canadian chef, producer, and actor Matty Matheson, front and center, accepting the award for the show.
I was happy to see that both those shows won big because they certainly deserve it.
Elton John now just the 19th EGOT recipient. That's Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. His husband, Canadian David Furnish, also named as a producer for Elton John Live, Farewell to Dodger Stadium. Other stars making history on this night, Stephen Yeun and Ali Wong of Beef, Wong becoming the first woman of Asian descent to win an Emmy for a lead role.
My hilarious father